Well, thank you very much, and welcome to Where Are They Now? And as we have been previewing here for the last couple hours, certainly someone who doesn't need a whole lot of introduction, especially if you follow the Cowboys on the radio. But we're talking about Matt Chief Davis joining us now. And, Chief, you heard that open, man. Gary Ward talking about maybe setting the wheels in motion, and everybody's enjoying the fruits of that labor now with Old Brate Stadium.
Well, everybody I heard in your open right there, I have no business following any of those guys, I promise you.
Nor do I even have a business being on this end. I just ask the questions. I just got to make the phone calls. That's all.
Let's see. I heard Thurman Thomas, Big Country, and Coach Ward. Yeah, I think I don't deserve to be next to any of those guys, I promise you. But, yeah, Coach Ward's exactly right. I mean, obviously him and Coach Holliday and Dave Holliday and those guys back in the 70s are getting this Cowboy baseball thing going. And Coach Ward should feel that way because a lot of the things that they did back then that we all enjoyed, especially me growing up watching, is set that tone, set that standard, and to help us get to where we are today. So Coach Ward should feel a little bit like that.
And we're going to get into a deep dive on the TCU series, but your day job, so to speak, Assistant Director of Facilities Operations, and that would include looking around every once in a while, Old Brate Stadium. First of all, I guess now the wow factor might be gone with you. Now it's a matter of, hey, this thing is unbelievable.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. Yeah, right now I spend about half the day at my office in the West End Zone, and then the other half the day over at Old Brate Stadium since baseball's in season. Obviously daily things of getting things lined out, any issues that may arise during the week. And it's definitely, you still, I was talking to Ryan Fulmer yesterday before the game, get to catch up with Fulmy, and he was in awe. He was like, I cannot believe this. He goes, remember all the days we were over there in that dungeon across across the street, and that's no disrespect to Allie P. Reynolds at all. But it was way past time. Basically everybody in the conference had passed us by facility-wise, and what once was the crown jewel of Allie P. was time to turn the page on that. So it was good catching up with Rhino, and you're right. You still I walk around there sometimes, and I don't really think that I'm in Stillwater. I mean, I don't. And maybe one day I'll get used to it a little bit more, but still, it's just amazing.
Speaking of amazing, in the space of about a couple of days, Mother Nature's kind of imposed her will on us here. Oklahoma State baseball, we had that first game of the series against Wilmington. After sitting around a while, finally called off, then a doubleheader. Then last night, coming within just a run, coming within an out,
right.
Or looking at it the other way, coming within one throwing error of having
right.
the lead, and all of a sudden you get I say a cheap win, that's what they call it, but it's a win nonetheless, and we didn't get that. So
no, there's no doubt about it. Well, one thing we know about Mother Nature is she's undefeated and untied. She never lost. She's never lost, so we know that. But you're right. You maybe play it clean in the top of that fifth. Then we're not sitting here, talking about it as much. But you know what? It would have been interesting to see if they'd have went up 2-1, and we had runners on first and second, no outs. How much longer we might have hung around there? you know what I mean? Trying to find a little spot maybe to get in the action, at least to tie that thing up or take the lead before we had to completely bang it. But hey, you know what? It ended 1-1. The Lightning wasn't going anywhere, so. Looking back on it, thank goodness we got out there 1-1, really, because they were set up to score 2 there in the top of that fifth.
And it's a shame numbers and the stats don't get included. They're really wiped. But the fact is, Osmond was on a pretty good pace. I don't know if he would have gone maybe one more. Who knows? But it became obvious after the trip over to Tulsa. They can't handle the hard stuff. Cash can, but the rest of them can't. And it was a strikeout festival pretty much.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's one of those days when you walk into the yard and you see the winds blowing in out of the north, 50-something degrees, and everybody's thinking, oh, man, this is not what we want to sign up for today. You've really got to execute. You got to throw strikes. You got to play clean defensively, and then you've got to move runners. You've got to play the game. Yesterday was a day of college baseball in Stillwater because the wind was blowing basically straight in from center, which means you weren't getting help anywhere in the ballpark. That you have to eliminate free baseball, and you've got to play it clean, and then you've got to play the game. You got to move runners, you got to hit behind runners, and so that game was moving quite right along because both teams for the most part were throwing strikes, and just making routine plays. And yesterday was one of those days in Stillwater where you're just like, man, it's almost like a chess match, no matter who you're playing, Tom.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I don't think we're being too dramatic by saying, starting this weekend, then the following weekend, and really the following weekend, next three, will go a long way toward determining, if Oklahoma State's closer to the number one spot in the league, or closer maybe to 4. And that's a lot to say. But let's just zero in on this weekend. TCU appears to me to be a little bit more offensive-minded this year than they have been maybe in the last couple. They still could throw it. They still defend it. But they can swing it a little bit better. Now, that you have a lot to do with that. You can keep that from happening from the mound. But would you agree with that assessment?
Oh no, I think you're right on. Yeah, I only got to see him play a couple innings. That was against Oklahoma when we got home after our games. I got to see some of that. But I talked to Matt Gardner on Monday, pitching coach at Texas Tech, and just kind of talking about these guys a little bit. And he hit the nail on the head, and it's probably a little bit what we got going too. They're just an old team. They got a bunch of old guys that played college baseball 4 and 5 years, like Zach Humphreys and Hunter Wolf and Connor Shepard, guys that have played, over 200 college baseball games. So, and that's benefited them a lot. And then they've got it done on the mound. They figured out their rotation. They lost their Friday night guy about week 3 to COVID, and he came back, and now they got him pitching on Sundays. But he was like a projected possibly first rounder, and his name's Johnny Ray. He goes from Friday to Sunday. And he's kind of been. I feel you feel kind of bad for the kid because he had it rolling here early. Everybody's on him, and then COVID has slowed him down. And just looking at his numbers, he's still got pretty good numbers, but he's not rolling along at the clip that he would like. But the guy Russell Smith, big 6'9" left-hander, stepped into that Friday role. He was the Sunday guy, and then the Saturday guy Austin Krob, another left-hander. So their Friday-Saturday guys combined records 10-1, just like us with Parker Scott and Justin Campbell being at 10-1. So no, the thing they do like to do, Tom, and they've done this the last couple of years. They like to run. They like to steal bases. They've got over 60 stolen bases. They like to hit and run. They like to start runners. They like to create offense. But as you know, the thing that stops that is get a lead, right?
Yeah.
Get a lead on them. Maybe 2, 3, 4 runs. That shuts that down, and they can't be quite as aggressive. But in their ballpark, if they get to going, they get a lead on you. They're gonna try to full court pressure and move runners and hit and run and steal bases. So no, they're just another veteran ball club. Their numbers speak for themselves. They've got a closer in Halen Green with seven saves, left-hander, and he's kind of like a Stanley type closer. He's got 16 appearances and 34 innings. So they'll use him 2 innings if they have to close out games. So. No, just another veteran ball club in this league. The league's full of it, so it's going to come down to who plays it clean, right? Who walks, hit batters, kicks it around. You got to play it clean, especially on the road. You got to play it clean.
They're not exactly a mirror of one another, but you go through starting pitching, and I don't think right now Parker Scott and Campbell back-to-back would take a backseat to anybody in any rotation, despite who you're going against. You talk about Stanley coming out of the pen. The Sunday guy's kind of been up and down. Robleski's up. Sometimes he's been there, sometimes he hasn't. And maybe Ray's been in that case there. But it sounds a whole lot like both teams are similar. And when you have similar situations, then as you said, if you boot it here and you walk this guy here and all of a sudden a guy leaves the yard, that's three easy ones that you got to make up.
Yeah, you're right. And for the most part, this ballpark, it rarely blows out. It's usually a crosswind, if anything. You're never going to have the benefit of slugging your way through this ballpark. So at times it can get really hard to score runs, and that makes it. That's where you can play clean and all that stuff that adds up. And no, I was kind of like looking at their numbers and then looking at our pitching numbers. It's like, well, you're right. I mean, it's almost like mirror image as far as what they like to do and who they like to turn the ball over to. And hopefully we can, with Bryce Osmond, what he did on Tuesday, I think he was probably maybe going to go 5, 6, maybe one more inning. His pitch count was about where it was, so they could use him on the weekend. But, maybe having him available for, him and Robleski on, 1-2 combo on a Sundays is going to be better than most, Tom, if Osmond, if he's right, and same with Robo. So I think that ability to have 4 starters to get through a weekend is – it'd be hard pressed to find somebody that's going to have 4 guys like we got when they're going good, and so Stanley on top of that. So feeling
Well,
pretty good
speaking
about
of
it
going
now.
good,
I think
as you
things are starting to
said,
get
I mean, you've seen this team now for 29 games,
right.
and I'm not blowing smoke here, but when the lineup's whole and you've got Morrow playing, he's not injured. You got McCusker back, and Cabanis is not limping around. You can cut McLean's there. You can cover Encarnacion Strand. I mean, this is a difficult lineup to have to go through 4 times.
Right, and especially if we could get Trinkle. Trinkle was just going, really starting to get going before he got hurt, and he should be back this weekend. And same with Jake Thompson. Jake Thompson's probably our most, well, obviously with Strand with what he's doing, but to have Strand and Jake Thompson and Trinkle, those guys getting going, that really makes that lineup flow together and makes it a lot more dangerous than it has been. But we haven't had this opportunity to get everybody playing together and everybody kind of getting going at the same time. And if that happens with the pitching we have, good luck to you. You know, that's a really tough ball club. But as we know, it's hard for anybody to be clicking on all cylinders all at the same time. But I just feel like we haven't played our best baseball, and that's saying something when you're 21-7.
And that's the nature of the game. You always leave the park wishing a phase of the game had been better. I mean, you're never happy completely, but you know, these numbers I think say what they want, and this includes all of them. But our starters, they got a ERA of about 3 accumulated over the year. Bullpen's been up a little bit of late, but when you get guys going 6 and 7 innings, like you get from Scott, like you get from Campbell, who, you know, he's moved in there now, he's kind of taken over that second spot, and even your third guy, when you get that 6-inning effort out of them, all of a sudden now, if you got problems in the bullpen, you can cover them a little bit.
Well, especially if you can get your Sunday go 6 or 7, because
right.
Then you're about 3 steps ahead of most people who's had to go to the pen. Usually, you typically a little earlier than that. But no, I think the key to this thing is, and we've talked about it on the broadcast, is keep developing those bridge guys, right? You know, I think Trevor Martin, for a freshman, he's been fantastic, but really need to get Cable going where we feel comfortable to hand him the ball. I mean, that's an arm you could see in the big leagues in a year or so. I mean, it's that stuff's that good. I mean, it's up to 100 with a split change and a good slider and just the command. He just hasn't been able to fully command everything. But if you can get that guy going, and then McLean is starting to throw a little bit now as well. You know, that's 93 to 95 with a pretty good depth on a 12-6 curveball. You know, maybe he's another one of those missing pieces late in the bullpen between Cable. Kel Davis has pitched pretty good in that bridge role here lately. So, you know, I think we got about 4 or 5 guys. If we can get all those guys, you know, on track where you feel good about them every time, and then you know, maybe your starters don't always have to go 7. You know, maybe you can get them out at 6 and protect them a little bit for the next week and roll it over to these guys. Like, we were so fortunate a few years ago. You know, looking back on it, Tom, is just how fortunate we were those years with Brendan McCurry and Vince Whelan.
Yeah,
you know,
man.
We just like, if we can get our starter to give us 5 innings, maybe 6, Whelan's going to chop off 2, and then Brendan's going to bring us on home, and that's how it felt, and it served so true. So, you know, you look back on it and you take for granted how good guys like Vince Whelan and Brendan McCurry were.
What are the odds that we'll see McLean on the mound before it's over?
Oh, I think very high. I think we'll see him on the mound sooner than later. How about that?
Well, that's good, because I mean he's done about everything you could ask for a youngster. I mean, his hands are unbelievable, and he could take that thing the other way, and he may hit it as hard to right center as he does anywhere else.
Well, right, and you know, we got a couple midweek games here. I'm not going to say breathers because no games are breathers, but you know, you got a couple games with Pine Bluff next week where you might run a guy out McLean out there to get him an inning or so, get him some work. So some you know, who knows? Maybe next week. You know,
you look up and down our lineup, and again, it's the guy who, and I know you agree with me here, but the guy who might not get a lot, and he doesn't care, I'm sure, a lot of the attention, but to me, he's the steady Eddie is Hewitt. I mean, there's a guy who's
no doubt.
He comes up, no matter when he comes up, there's a guy on, seemingly, and no matter what happens, he manages to get the guy in. And that, to me, is something you can count on game in and game out.
No, the worst thing you could do is get 2 strikes on him. That's literally the worst thing you could do to him. You get 2 strikes on him, he's going to choke up a bit, and he's just going to have a nice level bat path, and he's going to shank it to left or hit one to right. I mean, yeah, your best pitch number 1, throw it down the middle, and maybe he gets himself out, because with 2 strikes, he's been double tough. And I think he's hitting 220, 225, but it doesn't feel that, because he does all the little things right. And if he doesn't get a hit, he moves a runner. He always seems to have productive at-bats. And so I agree totally with you, Tom, on that deal.
He is, when he's yours, you love him. When he's not yours, he is maybe the biggest pest in the lineup because you just can't get a quick at-bat with the guy, like you said.
No, it's right. If you get him to 2 strikes, it might be 10, 12 pitches, and then you look up and you end up walking him, and you're like, how'd that happen? How did it? I had him 0-2. How did that happen? You're right.
Tell me about Campbell. This guy, I think he's one of the best pinch hitters that we can count on. I mean, he can come in there and find a hole somewhere and get a base hit. But he is just – was it the Oral Roberts game where he just basically took over and said, look, he didn't say this literally, but his performance said, I'm probably worthy of a weekend spot. The first time he pitched over there, he struck out 14, whatever it was. But this guy's unbelievable now.
Yeah, I would say the Tuesday before that against Missouri State. The Tuesday before that over at Missouri State, he was absolutely lights out too, and his stuff got better. And they didn't have as many hits off of him as Oral Roberts did. I mean, he really dominated them as far as that goes, not as far as the strikeouts go. But then the very next week against Oral Roberts, when things got tight or he got guys on, he raised his game. I mean, he was 88 to 91, 92. With guys on, he was like 93, 94, and the curveball had a lot of depth to it. He had his flush change working. He's a guy that when things get tight or runners get on or second and third, he'll find the strikeout or he'll make the pitch. And if he gives up a hit, Tom, he goes back and attacks the next guy. Like he just has a great mindset and how he can separate things like giving up a hit or walking a guy or hitting a guy. He can separate that and go attack the next guy, make the next pitch. I mean, he was on a run of 28, 29 innings.
Yeah, he was.
Giving up an earned run. I mean, that's that's almost mind-boggling to think.
What do you make of as we kind of running out of time here? What do you make of the conference itself? There's some separation for sure, although there's still a long way to go. Most teams have 4 or 5 series still left, so that's a lot of games. But it seems like you can find the cream a little bit starting to rise with Texas and Oklahoma State, TCU, maybe Tech. I mean, they seem to be on their way back, and then you got some mid-pack teams, you got some tail enders. Do you see the same separation?
You know what? I think Tech is good, but they're not as good as they've been the last few years. And obviously, they lost a lot of really good players, but the injuries have really, especially on the mound, the injuries have hurt Texas Tech, and they might be gone. Their Friday night guy in Burnsville might be done now with rotator cuff. So they're still plenty good, especially they're plenty good in Lubbock, right? They're not easy to beat anyway, but maybe they're not quite as good as they have been because of the injury situation. But if they were healthy, they would probably be better than they have been. I think Oklahoma, at least on the mound, Oklahoma probably they've taken a step back because they lost off their starting rotation to the draft and they had some high-end guys. But Oklahoma's a little more offensive than they've been in the past. Texas is pretty good, right? They're feeling good about it, and you'll never find a better front runner than the Longhorns, right? When they got it rolling,
right.
When they got it rolling, they feel good. They think they're unstoppable. But we'll get an eye on them next week, and but they're out to the best start. When you win 5 out of 6 in your first 2 conference series on the road, you're 5-1 at home and 5-2 on the road, or 5-1 on the road. That gives you a pretty good head start on people. And TCU, I think that they're solid. They're up there too. So right now, I think that those 4 teams, us, Texas, TCU, and Texas Tech are right there. West Virginia's in there. Oklahoma's in there. You know what? Kansas State's right there too. I know their record doesn't show that, but that's the best starting rotation that Kansas State maybe has ever had in their history of their program. And this weekend will be interesting with them and Oklahoma. That's kind of the separation of, are you going to have a chance to be towards the middle of the pack, or are you going to be down towards the bottom of the pack with, I think, Oklahoma's 3-6 and they're 2-7 or whatever. So and in Kansas, Kansas is a veteran ball club. They're out the gate slow, but I think Texas being better. The nation when Texas is good, automatically the Big 12 is good, right? And it's just always been that way, and it's like that in football too. If Oklahoma and Texas are good, oh man, the Big 12 is good. If those teams aren't maybe as good, then that was a weak league. So I think this league is very solid, but I think Texas being as good as they are has probably given a more national level. People probably look at take it a little bit more serious.
Last thing, this appears to be, to me, some team's going to come out of this series this weekend in Fort Worth 2-1, and the team that didn't win 2 is going to be saying, we were this away or that away from maybe sweeping the whole thing. I think they're pretty close. You feel the same way?
Oh no, I do. I just looking at our numbers, very, very similar teams, and it's going to come down like I feel anyway. It's going to come down to that free baseball, Tom. Who makes the mistakes and who walks the guys and hits guys and kicks it around, and who doesn't play it clean. And we'll probably look up at the end of the weekend, and you're right. Somebody's going to be looking back going, man, we let that get away. 'Cause I still feel like we left some meat on the bone in Lubbock. I really thought we should have walked out there with 2.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back on it, and it didn't happen. Hopefully we don't have that same feeling this weekend in Fort Worth. Hopefully we can walk out there going, man, I wish we could have got that 3rd one.
I'd be remiss if we didn't go out on this note because you know these guys, but just looking around, I just saw Will Walton got called up again by Seattle. I don't know if he's playing immediately or not, but he got called out of the alternate training site. Of course, Jordy's with Washington now, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
And he's made the tour of the East. And I don't know about Lyons. Is Lyons on the Yankee roster, or is he on the alternate training site?
You know what? He called it up last week.
Oh, man, did he?
From what I understand is he just said, you know what? I don't know about this designated for assignment stuff. So from what I understand, that I haven't had a chance to talk to him, but Tyler called it up last week.
Well, when we had him on the last year, he kind of hinted that crossed his mind a couple of times, but he stayed with it. Well, he's had a good career for sure. That lefty.
Absolutely, man, and he's one of the all-time favorites because he earned everything he got. I promise.
Isn't it great that we could talk about these guys and we knew them when they were just kids when they came in here?
Yeah, that's right. Now they're grown-up men with married with kids and all that good stuff.
Hey, we'll let you get back to your pitching coach's duties there in Perkins. I mean, what's that team ERA? Can I give you credit or not?
Oh no, yeah, we're pitching well, man. We're pitching well. When we don't pitch well, I blame the offense.
See, so. I don't blame you. You're a typical pitching coach for sure. You've learned well. Hey, Chief, you and Rex, you know how much I enjoy listening to you guys. You guys do a hell of a job. I say it every time I have you on. But it's the truth. If you got a chance, don't miss Chief and Rex when they get on that radio. They give you all the information you need, and have a good trip down there and bring a couple back if you can. Bring them all back, but bring a couple back.
Well, we definitely appreciate everybody that listens, and it's our honor to call Cowboy baseball. And for me anyway, it's so easy for me because I'm working with a living legend in Rex Holt, who's 39 years in, looking at 40 years in, and no ego at all. He paints a picture with the best of them, and I sit there and give a few stats and fill in. But no, it makes it easy when you're working with a legend like Rex, and we'll do our best, Tom, to go down there and win that series. And maybe if the sun shines on the Cowboys, we can find a way to win all 3.
That'd be nice. Now we'd be sitting pretty bringing those 3 back.
Absolutely.
All right, buddy. Have a good trip. We'll talk to you when you get back.
Yes, sir, Tom.
See you, man.
I see you, TD.
Okay, that is Matt Davis, the Chief, and